grid for this is as follows. On the front row,
first race of the race weekend. It's the Classic K and Swinging 60s Group 1 battle, and we've got a real mix of cars at the front of the grid. Coming around behind the pace car, Graham Langford starting on pole position, the TVR on the left-hand side of the shot. The right-hand side, the little Lotus Elan of Mel Taylor, showing with Ben Cater. Second row, the red Marcos. That was qualified by Alan Tice, showing with Chris Connolly, Steve Smith and Jack Smith in the great-looking MGA, just going out of shot. Then a Turner in 5th place and a Lotus Elan in 6th. And so we go down the field. So much variety. So let's take a look at the grid with the graphics. Giles Langford in the TVR, Griffith 3-2-1 on pole position, Mel Taylor alongside. Moving down, let's go to the down. Tim Cairns, we just saw his Turner in 5th on the grid. And behind him, Richard Morel, car 77, and alongside him, Brian Lambert. Then Clive Tong, great little mini we saw this morning, and Ian Staines form row number 5. And the field goes on and on, even have reserve drivers. One of the cars that pulled off, the little Turner of Luke Voss, that got going again and set good enough time to be just outside the top 10. But these are the cars from the Swinging 60s. It's all in the name. These are the less well-powered ones. The more powerful ones take a second race later on, but great grid of cars, amazing diversity. Little Ginettas in there as well among the Turners and the MGs, Sprites and Midgets, MGBs a little bit further back, more lesser powered TVRs towards the tail of the field, and a Cortina GT just going out of shot. Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit, always a draw for the drivers. Such an exciting stretch of tarmac. And when the cars turn left rather than right when they get to Surtees, that means you're onto the Grand Prix loop, and this is the first part of it. Out of Surtees, you rise up the slope, it plateaus out, then down Pilgrim's Drop, and then suddenly you're looking at the climb up Hawthorne Hill into the corner where the pole car, the TVR, is just approaching now. Fairly blind on entry. The track's wide, there's a bit of runoff on the outside, but this is old school motor racing. And then the run along the top from Hawthorns to Westfield before. The best thing about Brands Hatch is the gradient change, dropping down out of Westfield as drivers turn to the right into the compression. After that, that is Dingledale. So this is the run we're looking at now as they go through Hawthorns up to Westfield, turning in at this point to the right, and the track then starts to lose the height that it gained up Hawthorne Hill. This is the drop into Dingledale. And then up the rise to Sheen Curve. If you were here a very long time ago, it used to be called Dingledale Corner, the next turner, turning to the right. And that effectively leaves, you'd probably say, 2 more corners. The penultimate corner is Sterling's, a very tricky left-hander, but if you can have good exit speed from the corner, here is Sterling's now, you can carry all that speed through Clearways, through Clark Curve, onto the start-finish straight, all the way onto Paddock Hill Bend. If you're slow getting the power down, you're going to be overtaken. So 23 rows. How healthy is British club racing? Great to see as we emerge from the pandemic that this race program all weekend is chock full of cars. So many, but almost every single race has reserve starters. If someone drops out, they get in, otherwise they don't. So the safety car pulls to one side, the pace car, it's set the pace. We're looking for a rolling start as the drivers come around. Oh, we're looking for a standing start. Just taking a look. No, standing start. Look out of the window. There are marshals on the grid. That wouldn't be good for a rolling start, but they will be forming up ASAP into position. But it gave them a chance to also clearly check the circuit conditions. There was a little flurry of rain just ahead during the GT World Challenge qualifying. So, front row of the grid, compare and contrast. 4.7 litre TVR Griffith on the one hand, and on the outside of the front row we've got Mel Taylor in number 62 Lotus Elan, clearly far less in the horsepower department, but rather more in terms of handling. So it's going to be a real nip and tuck battle, but certainly Graham Langford had plenty of pace from that mighty TVR. The question is the track surface going to be fully dry for him to be able to put that down on the surface? Last few rows of cars just swinging into position, and it looks as though BGJ will be bringing up the rear of the order. Car, yeah, that's Barbara Lambert in the last runner there, the MGB, car number 34, just behind Richard Locke's MGB as well. So they're just moving forward into position, but it's a great sight looking down ahead of the start of the Classic K and Swinging 60s brackets Group 1 race. So we've got the Classic K, which is the Mintex Classic K class, and one of their representatives, Alan Tice, starting from second row of the grid in the red Marcos. You can just see it behind the white and green TVR that sits on pole position. The track, it's not flat, it's not straight, but it is the start-finish straight. You can see it slopes down towards the pit wall, but effectively from their point of view, it rises up towards the first corner. A little mini gem in the mix, the last few cars just being put into position. Porsche 356 down towards the back. Little NSU on the right-hand side of the grid. Isn't that great to see? NSU TTS, driver of that is Glenn Canning. So great diversity of cars. A few people have forgotten who they are or what their number is. They need to, the NSU needs to come forward. So this will be sorted. That's around middle order in this grid. But for those at the front, they're sitting waiting now. Well done to the marshals. They've got people into the right positions. So good to see sun glinting off the bonnets of the cars at the front end of the grid, because rain has had a little dabble around here at Brands Hatch. There's still a very dark cloud hanging above South Bank for the spectators who watch in that time-honoured position. But looking across the start-finish straight, it's in sunshine. The Mini, unfortunately, has not managed to get to the start of the race. That's car number 2. That's Anthony Hunting, Mini Cooper. Well, I couldn't look more patriotic with the Union flag on the roof, but that's not a fortunate thing to happen at all. So I don't know what the problem is, but clearly going nowhere fast. So very disappointing. That was starting halfway up the grid on the 12th row, but for Anthony Hunting, not starting at all, I'm afraid. The lights are coming on, waiting for the release. When the red lights flip off to green, the TVR you expect to get going. And again, you can see the problem with that sloping start-finish straight, going down towards the pit wall. All the 4.7 litre forward power of that TVR got put down to the circuit, but it took a while to get enough grip to go forward rather than sideways. So up from the second row of the grid is the Marcus of Alan Tice. This will come to the pit stops later, but right now you can be sure that Graham Langford is going to try his very best to open out the largest lead he possibly can. Oh, and unfortunately we've had a collision, and the Mini that was starting very well, Clive Tong, has been involved with a number 70 Sprite that was starting there or thereabouts, but that's unfortunate. That's Richard Bryan. Fabulous party wear entry, and a blow going into Druids. Won't be the first time that's happened. That little MG midget is a little more midget than it was before. And the MGA that started fourth on the grid, Steve Smith, lost a bit of ground, but he's got back up into fourth place. He's got little elan of Nigel Adams for company. In fact, almost everyone out there has someone for company, with the exception of the pole starter, who is pulling ever further clear. That's Graham Langford. Challenge for fourth place. Tim Cairns and the little mid-blue Turner tucked in behind, trying to challenge the MGA. But safety car is coming out because, well, obviously we've got the MG midget up just before Druids after the clatter. We've also got the Mini number 2 on the start-finish straight, off on driver's left as they come down the start-finish straight, up on the grass. But the message is now received by the front 3 runners. It's Graham Langford from Alan Tice, Mel Taylor in third position.
And that is in part because we also have the number 8 Mini at Druids, and we do have just see the roof.
So Clive Tong has gone no further. He was clattered into by the MG midget, and late braking didn't quite work, unfortunately, for Richard Bryan. And clearly that bodywork is more than a little bit tattered. So disappointment didn't work on the opening lap of the race, but maybe get a look at the replay. And there's the number 2 Mini on the right-hand side of the circuit as we look at it. There's the safety car, importantly, round to grab the field of cars. So Graham Langford will have to do it all over again. If we ever get treated to a replay of the restart, you could really see Langford trying to get the power down, accelerate as hard as he could, but the car started slipping away, the TVR going down towards the pit wall because it just didn't want to go forward. Sometimes the law of physics really comes into its own at Brands Hatch, and drivers who've raced here before, if you start further back on the grid, it's much, much more level. So let's go back and take a look at the start of the race, and just finally Graham Langford got the power down in the right way to get the TVR going forward. So he blasted off from pole position. A good start from the outside of the front right from the Lotus Sedan, and the Marcos Alan Tice in third place, going all nice and tidy into Paddock Hill Bend. 2 by 2 they went, and 2 by 2 they travelled through the first corner. In fact, a brilliant start from both the cars on the third row, the Turner of Tim Cairns and Nigel Adams in the little yellow Lotus. So great rear shot. You can see they were 2, 3, even 4 abreast through Paddock Hill Bend. You might have thought that could come to blows. It didn't. But the blows came very soon after that. So the front runners, the TVR, the Marcos, and the Lotus down into the dip out of Paddock Hill Bend. Up they come up the hill to Druids. And it was here that a couple of cars came to blows. And for Clive Tong, look out for the white Mini with the blue roundels on the door. And coming from some distance further back is the number 70 MG Midget. And how did they come to blows? It was on the approach, and the MG Midget... Oh, actually, right, Clive Tong was spun into the path of the Brian Mini. I wondered how he'd come from about 4 rows further back, but both those cars out of the race. So someone else gave an assist to Clive Tong, and unfortunately for Richard Bryan, he suddenly had the Mini going sideways in front of him and clattered into its rear. So no blame apportioned at all there to Bryan. Just one of those really, really unfortunate things when you're already just getting into the braking zone. So lights out on the safety car, just waiting to see whether they would do one further lap, but they've cleared things up very quickly indeed, if that's the case, because we're about to restart the race. And oh, the Marcus got a little bit caught out there and dropped right back in. I mean, suddenly, brilliant restart from Graham Langford. The Marcus hung back and nearly got passed by those behind, but look, it's about a 3-second advantage over the start-finish line, maybe slightly more. Back to Alan Tice, 4 seconds back to Alan Tice, so he was caught napping, or more to the point, maybe Graham Langford was just absolutely spot on. He noticed the lights had gone out on the safety car and leapt as soon as he could. Of course, he's got lots of grunt in that TVR. Of course, he was going to make a better start, but really the difference is far bigger than it might have been. So as this Classic K and swinging 60s race gets back underway, because we've already been underway once. It's a huge lead being opened up by the TVR driver. Now, in this race, it's 40 minutes all in. The clock carried on ticking. We've got under 35 minutes remaining. Around the mid-distance, there'll be a 2-minute pit stop for each of the cars. Some of them have got 2 drivers, so there'll be a driver change. Others, where you just have 1 driver, they will stay on board. But certainly for the pole starter, Graham Langford, he's going to hand over that Griffith to Michael Whittaker. Oh dear, that's not fair in the opposition, is it? Because Michael has been driving Griffiths quickly for a very, very long time. So that certainly has to be the favourite for this race as it stands. But the pit stop will have to be served around middle distance. Conditions look absolutely fine. Of course, we had the little flurry of rain before. That didn't lead to the accident that we had in the opening lap. Oh, sudden challenge for 3rd place. Mel Taylor being looked at very, very seriously indeed by Steve Smith. MGA not making it work. And now in the background, 2 Turners fighting together. Tim Cairns in number 18, just prevailing for now, but he's got more than a little company. 77, Richard Merrill in the Alpha just a little bit further back. But it's Nigel Adams. No, sorry, it's Voss who's moved up. Doing very well indeed. Luke Voss, he started down on the 6th row, but the fact he's up challenging the Turner that started on row number 3 shows what a great run Luke Voss had. He came off the circuit, or his car stopped in the qualifying session, but he got it back going again, so maybe his grid position wasn't representative, but his pace certainly very, very good indeed. So back to full racing speed, and when they started this lap already, Graham Langford had opened out because he anticipated the start very well indeed. A 4-second advantage that was doubled around the lap, so 4 seconds gained and 4 seconds added. So, and it's continuing to stretch, not by enormous margins. Now the pace is settling down between the front few, and in fact the fastest of all is the driver in 4th place, the MGA driver, Stevie Smith. We'll be showing with Jack Smith later in the race. How'd you like your mix of cars? An MG Midget, an Alfa Romeo. I think that should be Richard Merrill. Ian Staines in behind. So just great variety at Brands Hatch. It's great to see them enjoying this full Grand Prix circuit. Nigel Adams in that yellow Lotus Elan, starting to be pushed quite hard now. Little red Ginetta trying to make moves from the back of that pack, car number 32. That's Brian Lambert, so he lost a little bit of ground at the start and is trying to get back to where he should be. But just great to see these cars from the 1960s. Alfa Romeo Giulia, very, very nice indeed. A little bit of smoke coming from the MG Midget just a couple of cars back. So that doesn't prove to be untoward. Romero coming through in about 8th place. He's got Hadrell right in behind. We're trying to sweep around the outside, going from clearways into Clark Curve over the start-finish line. That Alfa Romeo will be just in front, but really starting to get in close behind. That's Hadrell, car number 123, who's made good progress. Sean Hadrell from the 6th row. A bit like Luke Voss, but Luke Voss has done better. He's up to 5th place overall from the 6th row. Graham Langford, he went up to 8.1 seconds clear. He gained another 3.7 seconds on that lap. He's 11-12 seconds clear at the moment. Oh, are we going to have Sean Hadrell gaining a position? Not quite, but the Alfa Romeo is certainly being challenged. Rich Romero hangs on for now to 9th place. Again, the first part of the lap, the first of the 3 timing sectors, favours the car in 4th place. Steve Smith, he's still in the MGA, chasing after Mel Taylor's Lotus Elan, which is in 3rd place. It's just 7/10 of a second between them, and double that and a little bit more, and that's the gap from Mel Taylor in 3rd to Alan Tice in the Marcos in 2nd place overall. There is no disputing the leader of the race. Starting this lap, 11.8 seconds to good. Will stretch even further. Graham Langford absolutely powering along in the number 321 TVR Griffith. Interesting to see who uses the curbs, who doesn't, and the Turner just looks a little bit more wieldy, just looks a little happier. It's lighter, it's smaller. Doesn't have the same grunt though, so you've got to build your momentum and keep your momentum. Down and down comes the group, and just trying to see the pace at the very front of the field. Oh, more time gained, one would think, this time around for the race leader. Graham Langford 11.1 seconds clear last time around. So Graham Langford in the TVR, Griffith, Alan Tice, Marcus 1800. Steve Smith has just now gone ahead of Mel Taylor, so we had that change for 3rd place overall. He's been hunting, he's been really quick, but hasn't been able to get past until now. And Mel Taylor, who started the outside of the front row in the silver and blue Lotus, is back into 4th place. But this man, Graham Langford, stretching clear, stroking clear. It sounds great, that 4.7 litre Ford. What a rumble. Look at this car, it's almost as wide as it is long, or short you should say. Look at the wheelbase, super short, and this is not a car for the faint-hearted, never has been. And once TVR, or an American dealer, started putting Ford engines in these big lumps, suddenly TVR realised that was a very good idea, and it's been much of the ethos of the company ever since. Of course, it's waiting for relaunch right now, but what a great rumble. Why didn't you just build cars like this? Now, sounded like a slight lift. Is the TVR surely too early to come into bits? No, just a bit. Yeah, I was just slightly concerned. Just with this advantage, I just really thought there was a bit of a lift there, but I didn't expect to hear one. Maybe my ears are playing tricks, but just remember that. Well, I'm just looking at his lap times. Oh, okay, there was a slow lap and now a faster lap. Suddenly, because the last time around, Graham Langford didn't stretch his advantage. In fact, it came down, but he suddenly just found another 3.5 seconds to go back onto sensible pace. I was maybe sort of looking and listening for a problem that wasn't there. You'll see that Lotus, the Ford Cortina GT managed to get out of the way, having snaked across the start-finish straight to find a gap in the wall. That's out of the way. Here's the driver in 2nd place, Alan Tice. 15, nearly 16 seconds in the rear, and now getting in among the back markers, including that mauve Austin A40 that's doing very well. Good job to keep out of the way. Well, it keeps out of the way of the marker, but not quite enough for the liking of Steve Smith, who lost a little bit of ground in the MGA. But I really fancy 2nd place is going to be maybe on borrowed time at the moment, because the MGA has proved it's very quick indeed. It got a little bit held up behind the Lotus Elan, and look, the Lotus Elan that started 2nd, not yet in shot. Mel Taylor's fallen back by about 3 seconds, or more to the point. It's Steve Smith going forward in the MGA, down Pilgrim's Drop. Up Hawthorns Hill they come, to Hawthorns, trying to carry the momentum they can, changing down into the corner, cruising through. There is the Lotus Elan. It really has fallen back for Mel Taylor. And just looking for, there's a little turner in 5th place being given chase. That 5th place was Tim Cairns, and the other turner is back into 6th. There's been a swapping of the lead turners in this race. Yes, and just looking, I don't know what it was. Graham Langford definitely backed off, or was forced to back off by traffic or incident. He didn't stretch his advantage for 1 lap. He'd been taking it out by nearly 4 seconds per lap, but he re-established himself and then immediately took it out by another 4 seconds a lap. Status quo established. I think Alan Tice is starting to struggle a little bit, because Steve Smith in 29 is in the MGA is really catching the car in 2nd place. It was 0.3 of a second on the start-finish line, waiting for the first timing sector, and Tice is reacting, responding. He's being hunted. There's Tice in 2nd place in the deep red Marcus GT, but the MGA right in behind. There they are, lights ablaze on the Marcus, sitting low. And straight up the inside. It's been so good in the 1st sector of the lap, just moves on to the 2nd sector, up into C. Smith, up into 2nd place. It was a question of, I mean, it took a lap, he chose his moment and chose it well, and hats off to Alan Tice, he didn't make it difficult. Picking off the Mini with ease and up into Hawthorns as the Porsche driver seen. He has just enough and leaves space. That's Keith Waters. Stays out of the way, doesn't interrupt the battle. And in fact, Alan Tice actually gained a tiny little bit in that little moment with traffic. But I think the story is going to be the car in front is going away, and Steve Smith is definitely doing that. A beautifully prepared MGA. Looks such a great handling car. So testament to the people that engineer that one. Another lap on the board for Graham Langford. Look, turn, and his rivals only now in 2nd and 3rd places, sweeping from clearways into Clark Curve onto the start-finish straight as Graham Langford rumbles his way onto another lap, up to Druids, round Druids, down the hill all over again, and only now are they crossing beneath my commentary box over the start-finish line. They're 21, nearly 22 seconds down. But this time it's Steve Smith in the MGA up into 2nd place, and Alan Tice down to 3rd. And they're nearly over 7 seconds clear of Mel Taylor. So the silver and blue Lotus sedan that started on the front row, falling back little by little, but it's got nearly 5 seconds to good over Luke Voss in the 5th place Turner, but that is charging. Let's have a look at their lap times in comparison. No, actually, last time around, the best lap for Luke Voss, but Mel Taylor was still a little bit quicker. Right, is this a standard pit stop? Alice Locke and Richard Locke there, Minis sitting in the pit lane. We've got a couple of other cars in the pit, so they've come in as soon as the pit window is open. Cars have to be stationary for 2 minutes. So in that time, you've got plenty of time in that period to make a driver change if so desired. So again, you don't want to fumble, you want to be absolutely clear. Is it 2 minutes from pit in to pit out, or 2 minutes stationary? The teams need to know that. The difference is quite enormous. Steve Smith is going better and better and better in the number 29 MGA. He's got past Alan Tice, who's responding. They're both picking up their pace. And in fact, Steve Smith just banged in the fastest 1st sector of anybody. So even though he's so many seconds down, it was nearly 18 seconds down on the TVR of Graham Langford, he's actually lapping faster than that has managed in the 1st sector of the lap. And that's from the start-finish line, through Paddock Hill Bend, up Aylwoods Hill to Druids, down through Graham Hill Bend, and just as you're running behind the paddock, just before you turn into Surtees, that's the 1st sector, and he's faster than the race-leading TVR through that. Of course, when you then get to the section from Surtees and the track really opens out, that's where the TVR just uses all the horsepower of that 4.7 litre engine, and then it pulls ever further clear. 24.7 seconds to good. Looks like we've got an MG off at the side of the circuit. Number 40. Looks like it's going to be able to keep going. Yep. Just checking the grass colour matches the car colour. It's pretty close. We'll let you have that one. and that was Philip Stader. In fact, I think he had stood out this morning. I think had a little grassy moment then as well. Ooh, kicking up the dust on the exit. And now, this is not the TVR Griffith, this is the TVR Grand Tourer. Less power to play with, great looking car. And of the front runners, who's in the pits? We've got Mel Taylor in the pits, 62 Lotus Elan. You can see about 4 cars back, but our race leader Graham Langford presses on. 24.699 seconds to the good. In fact, he's just put in the fastest lap of the race. Maybe that's his lap before he comes in. Quite often that happens. No, another lap going to go on the board. We've still got 21 minutes. It's a 40-minute race, so looks like it's going to be very fair, the driver time allocation, before Mike Whitaker takes over. Looks like they're going to share it, pretty much split it down the middle. Oh dear, whatever was the problem for Philip Stader, they will have to go for mech repairs, because maybe something happened when the car went off, but something's clearly happened now, and it's made it round to the end of the lap. Parked just before the gravel trap, but well off the side of the circuit at Clearways there, so quite sensible. But maybe it was already trickling in. He didn't want to block the pit lane. Imagine doing that. It's a very tight pit lane entry, and if you've got drivers coming in for pit stops. Oh, 52, little Mini having a moment on the grass, and then that's on the exit of Westfield. And gravity was its friend as it trickles down the hill and goes back into the race. Number 7 E-Type, again, just lovely to see this mix of cars. Paul Castaldini, showing that with Miles Castaldini. I'd say pretty much half the field, maybe 6% of the field have either made their pit stops or are making them. So the front runners, though, still staying out. The race leader Graham Langford, Steve Smith in second, Alan Trice in third. And now, with other cars coming in, it means Ian Staines, car number 16, has moved up into fourth place overall, just a position ahead of Luke Voss. That happened last time around. So Ian Staines in his MG Midget started to make decent progress there. Still just checking who's going to be calling at the pits next. The Alfa Romeo, Richard Merrill, that's in the pit lane. The bright yellow Ginetta down there as well. Lots of MGB racers. That's Richard Locke, going with Alice Locke. No, in fact, on the entry list, sharing with himself, Richard Locke, car 36. So the TVR into the pit lane. Mike Whitaker about to thread himself on board. Tall Mike. But, you know, very good run from Graham Langford. Alan Tice has remained out in the Marcos, so he's leading. Steve Smith in the MGA, here he comes now. That just emphasises the advantage that was had by the TVR Griffith, because it was halfway through their pit stop. But there's no advantage to be gained. You have 2 minutes for your pit stop, so what you bring in as an advantage, you keep as an advantage, unless someone has an absolute disaster of a pit stop. And anybody who goes under the minimum time, of course, they'll pick up time penalties. So Alan Tice sharing with Chris Connolly, but not sharing yet. Come on, play nicely. So Chris Connolly waiting, and I'm sure this time around, with only 18 minutes remaining in this race, he will come in. Now, a lot of the cars we're seeing sweeping through have made their pit stops. And the order will scramble for a little bit, but I think it'll go back pretty much to how it was when all and sundry. I think we've got about 6-7 more cars to take pit stops. Typically, they're the ones towards the front end of the race because of the race order at the moment, by dint of some of the quicker cars already having come into the pit lane. E-Type Jaguar making its way in for the Castaldinis. And Miles Castaldini gesticulating, getting his car in where he needs it. In fact, it's pretty much the busiest time it's been in the pit lane. Rumble, roar, the TVR down the pit lane, keeping down at the beneath the speed limit. No point with such a large advantage wasting any of it at all. And then the twisting exit from the pit lane, drivers turn to the right, to the left. And then up the rise, And coming out's always quite tricky, just being able to see anybody coming up. The little Porsche, suddenly finding that TVR is really rather wide. Car from second place, Ian Staines would have handed that over. Sorry, Alan Tice would have handed that over to Chris Connolly. No, he won't. That's Steve Smith to Jack Smith. Sorry, of course, Chris Connolly will be getting into the Marcos. The Marcos that stood out on the circuit, or is it just in the pit lane? It's now in the pit lane. So Alan Tice coming in now, handing over to Chris Connolly, but I would think that will emerge. There it is at a standstill, car number 19. And it goes back onto the circuit, should go back into third position. And again, no point hurrying too much in the pit stop. There's time of plenty in the 2-minute window to get the job done. So Steve Smith handed over to Jack Smith. It's still saying S. Smith on the screen. Put it this way, the programme said there was a Jack Smith to be had. We'll check if that will update, but it looks like the pace of the car is every bit as good as it was in the first part of the race. Driving with space to spare is the time to spare. No time to be wasted in the pits. And lights on, waiting for the queue to leave. The big question is, the MGA going to still be in front? It's running around the circuit when the Marcos rejoins. The Marcos went on a couple of laps further. And wait for it, wait for it. What's the big hand say at the moment? I think it's possibly time to go now. Just check for safe release. So thumb up, all clear for Chris Connolly, so he will be coming out to take the second part of the race. TVR already rumbled its way through, while what was the third place Marcos is probably going to pop back out into third, or will it be second? Where is the MGA? Just looking to see if the MGA car number 29 for the Smiths has come past. It's in the background of the shot. Should carry enough speed to just whisk around the outside. No, the Marcos may get enough under power. It leaves, oh, the MGB's in the way. How are they going to do it? One's going to go inside, one's going to go outside. Looks like the Marcos has prevailed. Chris Connolly's got it, but with a sweep around the outside. It is Steve Smith in the second part of the race, but can he get the braking done, going around the outside of the 44 Ginetta? Oh, there's not much grip there yet, not much grip, and the Marcos trying its utmost to live with him and get his nose in front. It looks like they've done just enough, but really unfortunate for the Marcos. They're coming out behind the MGB and just couldn't carry its speed into Paddock Hill Bend. TVR, by the way, Graham Langford started it, is streets clear. I'll give you the exact timing interval between first in this battle for second and third positions next time around, when the TVR 3-2-1 has put another lap on the board. See, all the runners now have made their pit stops. I think a couple are still in the pits, and some are serving much longer pit stops, including, unfortunately, Mike Henney is Austin Healy Sprite, with the pit stops being done in 2 minutes or just slightly over. The clock still running for nearly 5 minutes for them, so they've fallen right down the order. And the Alfa Romeo that was started by Richard Merrill has made its pit stop and gone no further, unfortunately, so hasn't returned to the race. That's tumbled right to the tail of the field. Very disappointing. Great looking Julia. Now, reinvigoration, the little Lotus Elan. Ben Cater's taken that over from Mel Taylor. This was a car that had started in second position ahead of these two rivals, fell behind in the first leg of the race, and now Mel Taylor will be able to have a bit of a smile, because Ben Cater's really fighting back. He's fourth, but he's caught up with this battle. He wants them to battle a little bit more, hold themselves up a little bit, perhaps. But second, third and fourth covered by just a whisker over a second. In fact, nothing of the sort. It's not even 2/3 of a second, and the Lotus is closing all the time, running a little bit wider Paddock Hill Bend, but the Marcos is up the inside this time of the MGA. And Jack Smith looking around the outside, and the inside's about to be filled by the Lotus, but the inside becomes the outside as they trot from one direction to the other into Graham Hill Bend. Come on, you've got to stick your nose up there. It's a tighter corner than it was long ago, so the Lotus has to back out, runs over the curbing on the exit. Drivers being watched for that this weekend. Track limits, very much the buzzword, but the MGA has a look up the inside. The Marcos is on the outside, but the Marcos should get the power down better and take the tighter line out of Surtees, and the Lotus is catching the pair of them. And to add to the excitement, as they try to go three abreast, look, the Lotus has got a far, far better exit. They both passed the MGA. Now they've got a gaggle of cars up ahead of them. Who's going to make space and who's going to hinder? Who's going to guess right? Well, that's been a very, very good start to the lap. For Ben Cater, he caught the Marcus and the MGA passed them. All got compromised in traffic there, lost momentum, nearly got given a wrap up the rear. Into Westfield they go. The MGA's really lost out in that little grouping. He's going to make his way through now, but unfortunately that little grouping got broken up. And Cater in the Ilan's got the pace to drop the Marcos. He's going to be helped in that if the MGA can catch on to the tail of the Marcus, but Chris Connolly is looking very, very positive indeed. Well, actually, you know what? Having got in front of the Marcus, I think Connolly now is getting up to speed and is going to just really take it back to the Lotus Elan that's holding down second position. And unfortunately for fans of the MGA, it's dropping back a little bit in fourth place. Jack Smith lost momentum in traffic and hasn't been able to stick to the tail, and in fact now in terms of actual speed I don't think he can live with them either, so maybe fourth will be as good as he can expect, but we've still got 11 minutes remaining in this race. But there's traffic up ahead, as always. Traffic that can affect, it can work for you, it can work against. Graham Langford, Michael Whitaker, TVR way, way up the track. 26 seconds nearly to the good. So it's looking like a very, very fine weekend for them. You would have expected there, the TVR Griffith, just so much power to play with. So thoroughly enjoying this combined race for the Mintex Classic K Series and the Adams and Page swinging 60s Group 1 runners, but the little Lotus Elan, I feared for it when it fell away from the front row, back to third by very early on the opening lap, then back to fourth, but now with Ben Cater on board, it's charging back up through the field. Its sector times, it's actually starting to take a little bit out of the lead TVR. Okay, the first of the three sectors around the lap is always where the Lotus would have an advantage by being so much more nimble and agile. The way it's been driven by Ben Cater, though, he's really, really grabbing it by the scruff of the neck and carrying what momentum he can build. He's carrying it, keeping it, and using it. Yeah, on this lap, Taylor has taken 3/4 of a second out of the leading TVR. That's number 321 in the first sector. Best part of a second out of it in the second sector. So unfortunately with 9 and a bit minutes remaining, he's not going to be able to take its lead away from it unless there's a problem for the TVR, but he's certainly taking chunks of time back out, which is most encouraging. But at the start of the lap they were 25 seconds apart. And another thing, looking at the sector times, when it gets to the third sector, the power of the TVR just takes away all the advantage that Ben Cater seems to be finding in the early part of the lap, but it was almost got to see the back wall of the inner paddock there, the Lotus Elan snapping away, and he did a fantastic job to save it, having got the power down a little too soon coming out of Graham Hill Bend. He's prepared to drift it as well, so very, very spectacular. Light car, skinny little tyres, but being used very, very well indeed by Ben Cater. The Marcus hanging in there, Chris Connolly about a second and a bit back, second and a quarter, second and a half perhaps. But I think from Connolly's point of view, he's only going to be able to gain if there's traffic, because looking at the pace and the way Ben Cater's throwing, the Lotus started by Mel Taylor around. He is really having fun, but I think in terms of actual pace he's got it, but I think the Marcus may just about to be able to stay with him if traffic's a little unkind to the Lotus Elan driver up in front, but the red Marcus still gives chase. And looking over the last few laps, it's been a huge advantage each time around, and on lap 13 look at that, an enormous gain, but that was around the time of the pit stop. But it's the last two laps, nearly 9/10 of a second in each of those laps, so no wonder he's pulling clear. And he's had the moment behind the paddock as well, running along the Cooper Straight, so that would have cost him time. So I think this lap he'll gain even more. Picks off the Porsche very easily indeed. The Marcus, look, there are now 3 cars between them. That's not going to be easy for Chris Connolly. He's in vain got his indicator on. In fact, I think that's been on since the pit stop. but still the Graham Langford, Michael Whitaker TVR. Look at that. That's blue flags waving. He's seen those all race because they wave for him as he comes up to pass the back markers and running through Hawthorns. He's been waved to the right to go past the MG midget, but he's going to be circumspect. But look, the gap has been changing a fair bit in recent laps, and Taylor's been taking chunks out of the race-leading TVR. Nearly 1.5 seconds last time around, so it's impressive, but the clock at the top of the screen doesn't lie. Just over 6 minutes 20 seconds remain in this 40-minute race. So you really feel the most that Mel Taylor, who's in the pits, and his co-driver Ben Cater, who's at the wheel of that 62 Lotus Elan, can expect his second place, but he's really, really going for it. He's dropped Marcos very quickly indeed. The Luke Wass car still going very well. The little Turner, 5th place overall. Tim Cairns 1.5 seconds down behind him in 6th. There's Tim Cairns in 18. Anyone who's ever driven a Turner will tell you they are just such nimble little cars, and around here, much fun. Of course, you can carry what speed you have, but the hardest thing is getting the speed in the first place. They were high on fun but low on horsepower. Well, very much the sort of format you'd expect from a car from the late 50s with 1380cc to play with. .188 MGB running a little bit wide through into Clark Curve in the background of the shot. Looks like it's about to gain a place. Will Stevens just outside the top 20. And again, Paddock Hill Bend, so much fun. Bill and Will sharing that car. The 356 Coupe, again, outgunned in various quarters, only 1600cc to play with. Great looking car. And still the gap between first and second comes down, but so too does the running clock at the top of the screen. It's down to 22 seconds now, and last time around 1.5, nearly 1.6 seconds gained by Ben Cater in the Lotus. The little Porsche accelerator number 5. Great to see it in the race, and shape of things to come, but not so. The shape changed, 356 Coupe, but the Stevens have great fun with that. With the TVR Griffith, 4.7 litres of runaway fun under the hood. Short, wide, twitchy, powerful, noisy, all sorts of great ingredients. Huge rear tyres. All the better for putting the power down with. It was difficult at the start of the race on the sideways sloping grid, but the power was down enough to lead into the first corner, and thereafter the TVR Griffith has led this race, but the gap was up as high as 29 seconds. It's now down to 19. It's coming down, but the clock is down to 3.5 minutes remaining. He can afford to back off. Last time around he was lost 2.8 seconds taken out of his lead, but surely with 19 seconds to good, 19 seconds and diminishing, that will keep on coming down, but he's got this one in the bag. Look at the way caution being used to go past the Austin A40. Doesn't need to take any risk, can choose his moments. Mark Cloutman keeping out of the way. And the Lotus Elan in second place. Ben Cater at the wheel at the moment, picking off a sister Elan. Does that with no difficulty at all. Big difference, just looking how the car in second just carries its momentum through Westfield down into the dip and immediately pulls out 10 car lengths on the pale blue one. So a chance for the driver of the pale blue one to take a look. Maybe he doesn't want to wag the tail of his Elan as much as Ben Cater is. He's really getting it loose, but seemingly that's the driving style he absolutely makes work for him. Setting off, would have lost a little bit behind that Triumph going out of the corner. Maybe not too much. Again, the confidence to go right the way to the outside of the circuit and just keep your foot in, but being done very well indeed. And it was Steve Adams in the Triumph Spitfire who just got past. So, how would you like to take your corner, in a straight line or with a bit of a wiggle? And oh, it's Ginetta this time getting it wrong out of Graham Hill Bend, getting out on the grasscrete and then coming back. And almost every corner, of course, you get a twitch and a wiggle from Ben Cater. Yeah, the tail kicking around. A lot of drivers would try and keep it straight, but he's carrying such speed that he's able to get the tail out without compromising it too much. And maybe because he's clear of traffic now, Michael Whittaker just put in some better laps, so it's stabilising the advantage at 19.5 seconds, or maybe to the point, maybe it was Ben Cater in second place in that little Lotus we've been watching who was interrupted, because he's now in the first sector alone taken the best part of a second out of the race leader, but the clock is still counting down, just over a minute to go, and whatever he does, it cannot be enough to overtake the TVR Griffith that's led from the very, very outset of this race, as you expected it to. Ian Staines continues to press on in the MG Midget from RG Race Engineering. That's in 6th place. No, it's not. It's in 9th place overall, but setting very clear. In fact, last time round was his best lap, so he's just got to find a few thousandths of a second and he might go up a position, racing against the Ginetta of Brian Lambert. But they're going on to its final lap with just 30 seconds remaining in this 40-minute race. Is the card instead from the outset. Started by Graham Langford, finished off by Mike Whittaker. Never ever tire of listening to a large V8 rumbling. This one's being driven very, very well indeed. It's all about using the right power in the right places on a circuit as twisting as Brands Hatch. Apply it when you're going a little bit too sideways and it's not going to be your friend. Very, very impressive lap last time around. Still giving chase, Ben Cater in the number 62 Lotus Sedan. He's 18.6 seconds down, but he's setting his best laps, or close to it, almost every time at the moment. But the clock is counting down. Another Turner being passed. That was 40X. As a Turner Alexander of Mike Henney keeps out of the way of the race leader, but the clock has reached the end of 40 minutes. Checkered flag will be the flag shown to the TVR when it comes around this final time. Dingledale, tick, job done, Sheen curve. Yep, careful, stayed off the curve. No need to press too hard, sitting on a lead of nearly 20 seconds. And for Michael Whittaker, nice controlled line, no need to press on too much at Stirling's when you're sitting on a lead that big, even though he's still being chased hard, but he cannot see Ben Cater, he's out of shot. All he can rely on is his messages from the pit wall. Power down, accelerate, accelerate. You can back off and coast from there, and victory will be yours. So Graham Langford started, and Michael Whittaker brings it home to victory. The first victory, the first race of this race meeting at Brands Hatch, and the car coming through into second place is Ben Cater. Didn't have the answers, but he gave it a very, very good shot. Let's see what the gap between them is. He'd be down to about 16 seconds, just waiting for that to come up onto the screen. 17.3 seconds, but you know, a valiant attempt to do his very best to just keep the TVR Griffith honest, but he did a very good job to drop the Marcos from behind him. Chris Connolly brings that through. He fell 13.6 seconds down in third place at the end, and fourth place goes to the Smiths in their MGA, and in turn they were another 8 and a bit seconds down in fourth place overall. Fifth place should go to Luke Voss, but 3:40 not making it to the end of the race. That's Daniel Ferguson, little MG midget, beached, and you can see the Fury because that's a good result out the window for him. Did he fall? Was he pushed? Well, I cannot tell you that, but now just got to wait to be pulled out because this race has come to an end. Last car's just coming around to take the finish. So Ferguson falling out of the top 20, unfortunately, with that. A few more cars to pass him and he'll drop a few more places, but unfortunate. There was a decent run there and it just came to a sticky end. In fact, that should be Billy Ferguson. Daniel Ferguson started the race. But in the pit lane, having completed the race, the 40-minute race, with the driver change in the middle. The TVR has come in the back entrance to the pits and is now rumbling down quietly for the first time to take the winner's honours. And in the end, the margin of victory, 17.3 seconds for them. And job very well done indeed. And trickling back to the outer paddock through the tunnel, and such a big field of cars. The last are still coming around to report to the pits through the back entrance and then return. But it was all about the TVR Griffith at the top of the table, with Giles Langford winning it handsomely, sharing with Michael Whitaker. 17.3 seconds at the end. Very entertaining race for Classic K and Swinging 60s. The Swinging 60s Group 1, we've got the more powerful cars in the second race of today, the last race of Saturday here on the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. Well, that was great fun. Again, the diversity of cars, the diversity of years in so many ways. And no wonder I feel like that was oversubscribed. But let's take a look at the results. It was Graham Langford and Michael Whitaker, 17.3 seconds to the good over the chasing Mel Taylor and Ben Cater, who really pushed on in the Lotus Elan in the second half of the race. Alan Tice and Chris Connolly sharing the Marcos that started from third on the grid, finished third overall, and the MGA that went from as high as second place in the early running for Steve Smith. Jack Smith brought that home in fourth place. Luke Voss went off in qualifying, but managed to work his way up the order to fifth place, having started on the sixth row. So great run for him in his Turner. Tim Cairns, another Turner racer, going very well indeed. Ian Staines in his MG Midget, finishing in seventh place overall. Then Sean Hadrell and Nicholas Watling, Brian Lambert and Nigel Adams, or Adams Nigel, and Lyndon Griffith completing the top 10 here at Brands Hatch. There'll be stories to tell up and down the finishing order, but really today it was all about the Langford and Whitaker TVR Griffith. It simply had too much grunt and enough handling to keep it on the black stuff, and a clear win in the first of the weekend's races. So let's go back. The TVR Griffith a little bit sideways off the grid, but held on to the lead into the opening corner of the race. And then Mel Taylor went a bit high and wide into Paddock Hill Bend, and up the inside dived the red Marcos of Alan Tice. Thank you very much indeed. Then trouble in the middle of the order. Clive Tong was put sideways in the Mini, and then unfortunately was collected from behind. Not much the driver could do who hit him. Brian and his MG Midget, they were both parked at the side of the circuit. The Turners started to make their moves, but the best battle in the first part of the race was for third place. And it was the MGA of Steve Smith really pressing Mel Taylor. They fought, they hunted each other. And the Marcos just about prevailing. MGs, Midgets or MGBs, however you like them, but they couldn't hold a candle to the TVR Griffith leading the way. The Marcos still fighting Alan Tice against Steve Smith, and then unfortunately a few spinners having their moment. But good to see 40 continued, but not for much longer. Then came the pit stops. Michael Whitaker in, and Graham Langford, who started from pole position, out. When they rejoined, they easily went back into the lead of the race. But when the Marcos rejoined, it came out just in front of the Smiths MGA and tried to keep, they had to go either side of the MGB on their run up to Druids, and the Marcos prevailed for them. But this position changed backwards and forwards a few times. But all along behind them, there was a silver and blue Lotus Elan coming on strong, and they're three abreast at a better exit speed. In the space of one corner, the Lotus Elan went from fourth up to second place. Fifth place still being held. Luke Voss going well, and the number 18 Turner in behind. That was Tim Cairns having a really good run. But there's the checkered flag. There is the race winner, Michael Whitaker. Job done in the TVR Griffith. Second place went to Ben Cater, sharing that Lotus Elan with Mel Taylor. Job very well done for him. And then right at the end, it was the Marcos that came into third. But it was all about the TVR. 3-2-1, the mighty Griffith taking victory. So the second race of this meeting at Brands Hatch on the Grand Prix circuit is the Adams and Page Swinging 60s Group 2. That's for more powerful cars. And Advantage Motorsport, their future classics. We've got a packed grid of cars being brought around to the grid to make their standing start. And it's the Nissan Skyline on pole position, the TVR Tuscan, the Tuscan Challenger cars on the outside of the front row. But just look at the shot, look at the diversity. Cars that look standard. I talked about the Nissan, but Mark Chilton isn't there in that Nissan in pole position. Godzilla has gone to fight other monsters. Alex Blake starting at the Taylor in the second row, Mazda RX-7, the TVR Tuscan Challenger, Stuart Dayburn in behind him, alongside Martin Ellis, the Talbot Sunbeam. Row number 4, Percy Wadhams, TVR Tuscan, Tim Bates, a Porsche 911 SC. Then John Hammersley will be sharing his Astra with Adam Brown, Astra GTE, and a Morgan Plus 8, Bob Searles will be sharing that with Tony Jardine. Camaro of Chaz Mallard will be starting 11th alongside Mark Campbell and Triumph TR5. Then comes Chris Warburton and a VW Golf, very standard looking car. It's white, you can just see it a little bit further down the order. There it is coming through shot. And a Camaro alongside as well, so plenty of muscle on display. That would be the muscle car of Raymond Barrow, and the field goes on and on and on. That is British club racing at its very, very best indeed. We had 23 rows of cars for the previous race. I think we've got every bit as many. Big Plymouth Cuda for Matt Snowball. That's number 481 starting on the 10th row. There it is, car 481. Great big numbers on the flanks of that. And then just such diversity. Triumph TR6 is in behind. But where there should be the Nissan Skyline GTR, the R32 at the front of the field, it's not there. The leading Japanese car is actually Alex Taylor's Mazda RX-7 starting from third grid position, but second effectively in this race. Such a mix of cars. Who'd have thought back in period, well, this is the glory of historic racing, that you can mix and match it how you like it. Great looking Datsun 240Z running behind the Lotus Europa, so Malcolm Johnson, the Lotus Europa, and Dean Halsey, who's starting on the inside of the 10th row. Few cars from TVR Tuscan Challenge, a much missed series from the 1990s, and they will have plenty of rumble to put down on the circuit around the Grand Prix loop. 2 Camaros, muscle cars from the 60s. Just checking, probably both running with the 5.7 litre engines. Yes, they both are, but where we should have the pole starting Nissan Skyline GTR, that is not there, so the outside of the front row becomes pole position. Tony Blake will be showing his TVR Tuscan with Aston Blake. It's car number 1, but they've shuffled the grid. Well, that needs to move forward because the Mazda should be on the row behind. Anyhow, that's what the marshals are down there for, to highlight exactly where the cars will start. Darian down at the back, great Rothmans livery on the 944 S2 Porsche, slab-sided Alpha 75 with the Reliant Sabre 6, that's the red car. On the left-hand side of the screen, more Porsche 944s at the rear of the grid. But as the cars get into their required formation, it's a colourful line of cars, and it's so long that the last car is only going into clearways now. As the field backs up, they line up. They need to be not 1 by 1 anymore. They've got to get into 2 by 2 formation. 40 minutes of racing. The Jaguar XJS, we saw that car number 128 deep in the gravel, and that's put it further down the grid than it would have wanted in qualifying. In fact, it's right down at the tail of the grid. That's Daniel Stewart and Ray Ingman, but expect that car to come forward. It just didn't have the chance to show that, having had its qualifying session interrupted and curtailed to such an extent. But I always quite like having a car that's got the potential to rumble up from the back of the field. Porsche 928S as well, down towards the tail of the field. That should be Adrian Clark, who's down towards the back of the pack, but again, plenty of grunt to be put down by him. Now, this is looking far more like it, the offset 2 by 2 rows, but with just 1 car on the front row, because missing the pole starter, which should have been Mark Chilton, but Tony Blake will hand over at the mandatory pit stop, a 2-minute pit stop in the middle section of this race. If you don't have a driver to change over to hand over to, you still stay in the pits for 2 minutes, and then you can resume. Come out even earlier and you'll get a time penalty. I'm just hearing that Stuart Dayburn in third row of the grid, the grey TVR Tuscan, is going to have a penalty to serve. I don't know as yet for what. So just waiting for the last few cars to get into position and the final race of the first day of the Brands Hatch meeting for the Fanatec GT World Challenge will be complete. But great to have fans here. They've been pouring in since this morning, and I hope they've enjoyed the racing. Well, there's been lots of qualifying. It was super close and some really, really good racing so far, and a packed agenda tomorrow. Weather has had little flurries of rain. We may yet get something now. We've got another very dark cloud just hanging over the pit lane at the moment, but let's see how the start gets underway. Wait for the red lights to come on. And look, a classic Brands Hatch start in that people can't get the power down on the sloping grid, but no mistake whatsoever from Tony Blake. Powers his TVR Tuscan Challenge car into the lead of the race. Is this going to be neat and tidy, or are we going to have contact in Paddock Hill Bend? Let's hope not. A few place changes further down the order. Nice and neat and tidy. So it's TVR from TVR. It's TV Tuscan from TVR Griffith. So Nigel Rubin has moved up from third into second place. The big Plymouth Cuda trying to go around the outside. That's Snowball. Very wide line, but it stayed out of trouble. But it's TVR Tuscan Challenge car, TVR Griffith, and the Mazda RX-7 that really struggled with Alex Taylor to get its power down to make it start, but scooped it up and only lost one place with that tail wagging moment. So the diversity of cars just outside the top 10, and Matt Snowball will have all the power in the Plymouth Cuda. And I was going to see how it would accelerate against the Triumph TR6, but with the TR6 running slightly wide off the circuit, that's not a fair comparison because the power couldn't go down. But a shuffling of order, but no shuffle from the car that was given pole position, Tony Blake, in his TVR Tuscan Challenge car. Well, there is a change because he's just been passed by Nigel Rubin. So many years racing at TVRs, and so twitchy for Nigel in the Griffith. Our older car, shorter, but 40 minutes to play. But that was a very, very positive move early on the opening lap for a change of the lead. Nigel Rubin, lights ablaze, comes down into clearways. Already starting to drop the Mazda in third place, Alex Taylor, but he's got a big advantage. The Porsche's coming forward. That's Tim Bates, car number 12. He's been challenged by Stuart Dayburn. Look in the background for the pale grey, dove grey TVR. It's pulled alongside, it's got its nose in front over the start-finish line. So Dayburn comes across in fourth place. Started fourth, fell back a bit. Tim Bates has got to do it all over again. The Lotus Europa just losing a place, the more powerful Porsche, so Malcolm Johnson losing a spot, but may yet gain it back, far more nimble when he gets the tighter corners of the circuit. Now, having taken the lead of the race, did we expect a move away? Because Tony Blake back into second place, Nigel Rubin into the lead of the race, but Tony Blake's looking very, very comfortable in second, sitting on his tail. Older TVR versus newer TVR, but newer TVRs from the 1990s. Wow, that was a very impressive move in terms of getting Surtees right and rocketing clear. So clearly in a straight line, that TVR Griffith is really, that's where it finds its advantage, and the Tuscan Challenge car better through the corners. I suppose that's not a great surprise. Now the Talbot Sunbeam, Martin Ellis starting to make progress. Moving up the order, went over the start-finish line in sixth place, may be able to pick off the Porsche of Tim Bates in fifth, certainly looking keen to do so. That's in 240Z, still ahead of John Hammersley in the Vauxhall Astra GTE. John quite busy this weekend, multiple entries here at Brands Hatch. Fabulous shots, the rear shot through Sheen curve. Drivers take a little bit of curve, but don't want to have too much in case it pitches you a little bit wide on the exit. And then you'd really run out of form and fortune. A Maserati Porsche, if you understand what I'm saying, going pretty well just outside the top 10. The Vauxhall dealer colours on that Vauxhall Astra still looking crisp. Primary colours, yellow, red and blue. A little VW Golf GTI jumping around very happily indeed, looking nicely planted on the circuit. That's Chris Warburton showing with John Warburton, car 81, and certainly Raymond Barrow could do nothing about it. He hasn't got the handling, he does have the horsepower in the second of the two Camaros in the race. And the Morgan +8 getting a little bit twitchy in front. Oh, and John Hammersley having a moment as well. So suddenly a few drivers getting a little bit loose as they run behind the paddock there. It's a section of the circuit, Cooper Straight. The Morgan +8, Bob Searles at the wheel at the moment. He'll hand that over to Tony Jardine. Again, the difference, if you've got big American grunt, you can power down Pilgrim's Drop, up Hawthorns Hill, but you get to the twisty bits and the Gulf will fight back, rest assured. So looking very neat indeed for the Warburtons. Around the outside, but without the power to accelerate away. So he's got to try and find a different line. Had the handling to take a better entry to Westfield than the Camaro driver could manage, but able to keep its nose in front, because then came the acceleration, which is clearly its forte. That's what it's about in a real mixed field of cars. We've got Advantage Motorsports Future Classic Series, but we've got there about 8 or 9 cars from the 70s group, and then the newer cars, including the Golf GTI, from the 80s group. And then you've got the Swinging 60s group. So we've got from Adams and Page, Swinging 60 group, that's the Group 2 car, and they're from the 60s. We've got 60s, 70s and 80s, all happy out on the circuit racing together. So Tony Blake chasing Nigel Rubin, but falling away 1.6 seconds down. He actually gained a couple of tenths last time around. They've got a comfortable margin of 6 and a bit seconds back to the Mazda RX-7 of Alex Taylor. And then this battle, Alex Taylor with plenty of company in behind. Stuart Dayburn in the grey Tuscan Challenge car, all over his tail. But catching is one thing, finding a way back is another. And their performance comes in very, very different ways around this circuit. More point and squirt in the Tuscan, more balance and take your momentum, carry your momentum in the rotary engine Mazda. Now, into Stirling's, you expect the Tuscan to get the power down sooner. Yep, already starts to gain, but where is he going to try and make a pass? It's surely not going to be into clearways. Having a look, trying to unsettle Taylor. Taylor's got the job done though, but did he slightly compromise his X-spin? Has he lost a bit of momentum? Absolutely he does. They both go past the Alpha 75. Of course, this is the part where the Tuscan's got more grunt. Can he make it stick? No, he can't. He's got to brake a little bit earlier into Paddock Hill Bend, get the confidence, get the car balanced. And then as they go out of the corner, the TBR will start to squeeze the power out of the car. Is he close enough to dive up the inside? He's having a look. You're not quite close enough there, but it's worth having a look. But actually halfway alongside is almost good enough. His nose just in front, but now the TBR on the wrong side of the circuit will have to think of another line into Graham Hill Bend. It's much tighter than I wish it was, because that used to be a better corner for carrying your speed through. And now Dayburn taking a look, but Alex Taylor not being compromised, and he gets the better exit. But you have to say Stuart Dayburn's having fun trying. But unfortunately for Dayburn, his compromise there meant that he didn't get the speed he wanted out of Surtees, and he's got to try and close in all over again. They've got back markers up ahead of them. They could be a help, they could be a hindrance. Car 44, the Morgan, holding on to 10th place at the moment, but there's company from behind. Raymond Barrow is just in behind Bob Searles, and the Golf car number 81 of Warburton is tucked in behind. A good 3-car battle. Chris Warburton bringing up the rear, but when he gets the twisty bits, he closes right in. Wow, look at the difference. They were right together, and the power of the grunt of the Chevrolet Camaro blasts it clear of the V8 engine Morgan. And now the corners get a bit twisty. Wait for the Golf to close right in. It does precisely that. There's a Porsche tucked in behind him as well. Car number 21, which is the Porsche of Paul Dolan's in a BMW 325i. Oh, that's the one he just passed. So the car behind starting to make progress. Ah, yes, it's 146. It's Miles Maserati, 1970s Porsche 911 Turbo. So he's got the grunt to close in. Meanwhile, at the front of the race, it's still under 2 seconds between first and second. 1 lap. Tony Blake, who started on, well, effective pole. Once the pole starter, Mark Chilton, didn't show up in the Skyline GTR. 1 lap, he stretches his legs and closes in a bit on Nigel Rubin, but Rubin, maybe it's dictated by the traffic, one taking a few more risks than the others, but Nigel Rubin still leads the race, handing over to Oliver Rubin when we get to the pit stops, but they ain't happening yet. Still too early for that. So Maserati closing in the Porsche, goes past one of the two Alfa 75s in the race, no problem at all. As Chris Warburton noticed what is about to start challenging him, he's so busy trying to take on the Morgan in front of him. Bob Searles has the grunt, has the line. Now, who's going to be better out of Surtees? Well, the answer is it's actually the Golf, but he gets chopped across his nose, quite rightly so. But then the grunt, the V8 grunt, will pull the Morgan clear. And of course, the Porsche 911 Turbo against the VW Golf GTI. There's only going to be one winner in that battle, so up goes Maserati up into, I think that's 12th place now, 11th place now. I actually think the Morgan, the Porsche and the Golf, in terms of pace, may have it on Raymond Barrow, but he's got track position in that white Camaro. Now let's see if they're going to be able. Oh, blimey, suddenly like the first lap all over again. And Alex Taylor in third place, the 63 Mazda. Well, I was going to say had problems in traffic, not as many problems as unfortunately Adrian Clark has had in the 928 Cup car. The Porsche sideways onto the track, sudden gaggle of traffic, but the battle for third place was between Stuart Dayburn in that grey TVR, who really got the wrong end of the straw there, the wrong end of the deal in traffic. They're coming past the stricken Porsche 928S. The flags are waved to warn them it's there. Now the grey Tuscan has got to take the battle to the Mazda, the Porsche 928. Good day, bad day. Well, both days, good days and bad days. And we'll be getting the bill for knocking things over. But anyhow, a little bit of front-end damage, but classic moment of just not going right out of Surtees.
That car was facing the wrong direction.
Now, suddenly, last time around, there was a much, much slower lap from Tony Blake in second place. We've actually got some cars in the pit lane. Maybe had a moment, but he shed to the race leader. He'd been keeping within half a second a lap, sometimes closing, sometimes losing. He lost 4 and a bit seconds on that lap. So he's now 6 seconds down on Nigel Rubin. Rubin leading the race in the TVR Griffith, number 47, the number 1 TVR Tuscan Challenge car in second place. Still with a decent advantage over third place, but I want to see where Alex Taylor, how much further back he is. 2.7 seconds, and it's another slower lap from Tony Blake. He's now 9.2 seconds in arrear in car number 1. Windscreen wipers on. Maybe it's just starting to spit. That could be the reason.
So it is starting to rain out there.
Oh yes, the visibility is becoming a little bit hazier. Other cars that get windscreen wipers on, can't see as yet. There's an Alfa 75 up ahead. That didn't have its blaze going. Now it does. Sorry, it's a smaller Alfa, it's a 33. And so no wonder the lap times are dropping away. But I suppose we look at, oh dear, someone has more than dropped away. They dropped the car away. And it's fairly deep in the gravel. Oh, it's one of the 2 Camaros. As the dust clears, that was car number 11, and that would have tumbled. That's Clive Mallard's car. Chaz Mallard, sorry, I had a friend called Clive Mallard once. Chaz Mallard's car, and that was how you do an off. Coming into the stadium section. Now, of course, what we had earlier when we had rain, Camaro very, very deep in the gravel. Is it quite time for the pit window to open? Nobody's made a pit stop as yet, but they're waiting for it, and people really, really backing off. Some people being a little more brave than others and gaining a few places, including Tim Bates seemed to have picked his way quite well through the traffic in the almost Brumos-style Porsche, white with the classic blue and red stripes up over the hood and down the flanks. Yeah, lap times dropping away. Yeah, most people are about 3 seconds off their best pace at the moment. So it's not wet, but it's not dry anymore. Well, we're surely getting, we have got a few cars coming into the pits now, so I think maybe pit window's open, but maybe people want to wait and see. But are we going to have a safety car coming onto the circuit? Because obviously, oh, we've got the Plymouth Cuda off in the background of the shot at the foot of Paddock Hill Bend on the left-hand side of the screen, so a little bit of a greasy circuit. That's easy for me to say in a dry commentary box, but we have this haze of rain over the circuit. You can see on the camera lens as the Plymouth Cuda gets going all over again. And the Mazda has fallen back a position behind Stuart Dayburn, but I heard whispers there might be a safety car, and there is. It hasn't picked up the race leader as yet. That should be Nigel Rubin he's got to find. Nigel Rubin in the 47 TVR Griffith. So the SC boards out around the circuit, the yellow flags being waved, and everything's going to back up because we've got that Chevrolet Camaro deep in the gravel at Clearways. We had the Plymouth Cuda off, the snowball car, that is back on the surface. But yes, this rain has sort of toyed with the circuit today, and now it looks for the first time as though it's coming in fairly properly. So there could still be a sting in the tail yet. Haven't quite got to half distance in this 40-minute race. The race leader, Nigel Rubin, number 47, TVR Griffith. He's about, there we are, 6 cars behind the safety car. He really needs to be the one who's at the front of that queue. And Tim Bates, one of the drivers in the pits, but he's one who doesn't have a teammate to hand over to, so he will just remain for the minimum time, which is 2 minutes, and then get going. And the remaining Chevrolet Camaro, that is also a solo driver car. That's Raymond Barrett. No, sorry, it's Raymond Barrett, yeah, in the background of the shot. The other car is the Chaz Mallard Camaro. That's the orange one, off in the gravel. So it's imperative not to blow your chances by leaving before the minimum pit stop time, because that would undo all the good work. And it's actually, this is how it's been at Brands Hatch today. Slippery when wet, and that was Chaz Mallard finding out. And as we look at that replay, the sky's already starting to lighten all over again. The rain has only, as I said, toyed with us. It's come through just enough to cause consternation and a few skids and moments. Dean Halsey in the number 240, Datsun 240Z. He's staying on board, another one of the solo drivers, waiting just a little bit of expiration check how all is out there. But effectively cars from the tail end of the top 10 by and large being the ones that have come in. Just trying to gauge, looking at the usage of the windscreen wipers, if it's on so intermittent wipe because it's just getting a little spray off the cars ahead, or there is still just a little bit of drizzle. But the drivers know the safety car is leading them round. We now have cars running nose to tail. And Tony Blake, remember, in the number 1 TVR Tuscan Challenge car, had fallen to about 9 seconds down in the space of a handful of laps because Nigel Rubin kept pressing on, but Blake lost his pace a little bit, which allowed Stuart Dayburn to come quite close to him. He's now only 3.5 seconds down, but a lot of the runners diving into the pits, and the number 47 TVR is among them. Our race leader pulls in behind the Caterham. And super crowded. If you're in that Rossman's liveried Porsche, you're going to rather hope that those in front can pull away and give you space to rejoin, but otherwise pretty tidy. Miles Maserati racing solo. He's got nobody to hand over his 911 Turbo from the 70s group. And again, hard-working course workers, marshals and the rescue marshals doing a good job with their towing gear there. But that Camaro is a heavy car sunk in deep gravel, so it's going to take quite a tug to get that out. Oh, and someone else off with no one to help him. The Ford Escort sitting deep in the gravel. Deary me, that's the hard way to do it. That should be Chris Smith in the Smith Automotive Ford Escort. Quite a few of the drivers at the far end of the circuit not using their wipers. And the Snowball car, Matt Snowball's Plymouth Cuda, it's big, it's huge, it went off the circuit, but it rejoined. That's the good news. It went off at the bottom of Paddock Hill Bend, but on the infield side of the circuit. Great graphics on that, and always a big fan of the big American cars being in dark blue. It just sets it off very nicely, particularly with those yellow, red and orange flashes on the bonnet. So still need to wait for Adrian Clark's Porsche 928 to be removed from the exit of Surtees. Just checking to see if the orange Camaro has now been pulled clear. I think it is now out of harm's way, but many incidents at the front of the field. Perry Wadhams is driving that number 77 TVR Tuscan Challenge car. Good to see so many of those cars back out on the circuit. And our race leader, Nigel Rubens. Yes, we've got 2, 3, about 4 or 5 cars that haven't pitted as yet. The race leader, the Rubens car, is being handed over from Nigel Rubin to Oliver Rubin. Oliver now going slowly towards pit exit, and Perry Waddens, we saw in the white and red Tuscan Challenge car, is the leader of the race, but he does need to come and make a pit stop. And Chris Warburton in the 81 VW Golf GTI, which we saw fighting so valiantly, not quite clear yet, the orange Camaro, is up into second place, but a pit stop is required for him, so he'll go tumbling down, but maybe no deeper than the 10th position or so. However, it's red lights at pit exit. We've still got the safety car leading the field around, but in fact there's very little field to lead around, basically, because everyone's in the pit lane. Everyone bar about 3 cars. So for Miles Maserati, he's going, but I've made my 2-minute minimum pit stop. But there is almost the entirety of the field. So for some drivers, it's going to give them a very, very good chance of taking on those ahead of them who had an advantage. Now they're just a couple of car lengths clear as they sit in pit exit, waiting to go. The Lotus Europa's even thrown its door open, trying to get some air into the car. That's Malcolm Johnson in 149, but Miles Maserati is sitting there stewing in his car. Oliver Rubin also, he'll certainly be stewing. All the heat coming from that big 4.7 litre engine will be coming straight back through the cockpit. No wonder he's got to get the door open. But that is our race leader. And he's sitting still, well, in fact, more than a dozen cars, but Perry Waddens in 77 is the leader of the race. He'll be coming in to make his pit stop, and that'll drop him right back down the order. But the Reliance Sabre 6 continues on round. The white Camaro still going round. That's Raymond Barrow. But Raymond has made his pit stop, so we've got a combination. It looks like this group are going to be released from the pits when the group that going past them on the start-finish straight have passed pit exit. Let's wait and see. But for Perry Waddens, he's had his moment in the lead of the race. He's got to serve his pit stop. You can't do a quick one. It's 2 minutes minimum. But when is the signal going to be given for Miles Maserati to power out in that red Porsche 911 Turbo onto the tail of this group? And now he is. So that group came through. So positions lost by everybody in this grouping. Don't forget, this does include our race leader any moment now. Well, you can see Tony Blake's car going back out, and that's in the hands of Aston Blake, but it's going to take a while for the screens to scramble and for us to get clarity on exactly who is in which position. But things are going to change very quickly. But number 47, TVR Griffith, it was the pace, the car that was setting the pace in the first stage of the race. We've still got the safety car leading the field around, only now turning into surtees as the car that was leading the race, the 47 TVR Griffiths, only just turning through Paddock Hill down into the compression, but all but coming to a stop. Why they come to a stop? I know the field is going to bunch up a bit behind the safety car, but has there been another incident? Maybe someone going wrong, getting it wrong out of Druids, just double checking. We've still got this field of stream of cars behind the safety car, but no, the field is all going out of Druids. Don't know why they got so close to each other they nearly came to a halt. So this is marginally confusing, but you know what's happening? The track is now starting to dry out. Not many cars using their wipers. About half of them doing that. I sense it might dry a little bit. Just looking for any further fallers around the circuit. Of course, we had the blue Escort deep in the gravel. That's been cleared. That was out at Westfield. But still, the yellow flags are waved. The safety car boards are still out there. And the second pack has caught the blue Escort that fell off. Because that's Miles Maserati. He was at the front of the group of cars that was trying to leave the pits, was held at pit exit, with Tony Jardine tucked in behind in that Morgan Plus 8, also getting pretty keen to go out on the circuit. But there can be no overtaking behind the safety car. Everyone's just hoping the driver in front of them will get closer to the car ahead of them, not let the pack get even further clear.
That's excellent. So that car did get retrieved and sent on its way, albeit
so Perry Waddens made his pit stop just as the others were being allowed to leave the pit exit. But it does look as though the advantage has swung to the cars that came in first for their pit stops. Perry Waddens all on his own. Must feel as though he's in a qualifying session or even a practice, midweek practice session. Now the safety car has withdrawn, the green flags are waved, and off goes the field. Reliance Sabre 6, Chevrolet Camaro, Talbot Sunbeam. Now the Talbot Sunbeam, does that mean Martin Ellis, who's handed over to Matthew Ellis, will be going right towards the front of the field. Just waiting for confirmation of that. Certainly Miles Maserati in the 146, the red Porsche, will be really getting the hammer down. Already past the blue Escort. VW Astra GTE taking a look up the inside. Oh no, I did hear a squeak and a squirm, and it was Alex Taylor off in the glorious looking but beached Pentax Mazda RX-7. Will that cause further safety car period? That's deep in the gravel, will need to be removed. This is one of the front running cars in the race, trying to make up ground after the pit stop. But the car that has really lost ground has been surely the Rubin car, held for so long in the pits, but it did have a tidy advantage before we came to the stops and the safety cars. Right now, simply got to just keep up. Oh, it's turning into Paddock Hill Bend, and turning as it arrived at Paddock Hill Bend. It snapped around on Alex Taylor, and that glorious Mazda RX-7 beached, and just looking for signals out of the window. Anything untoward? Are they going to be? Well, it's going to be waved yellow flags at the top of Paddock Hill Bend. Safety car all over again. Are we seeing? That's the back of the safety car board. But I would have thought, with that Mazda in the gravel, it has to be removed. And the clock ticking down. Everyone's still at racing speed. I expected the 181, the Warburton car, John and Chris Warburton. It's John at the wheel now, fighting with the Ellis car. It was Martin, it's now Matthew Ellis and the Talbot Sunbeam. They should have a really good scrap to the end. So all overtaking must be considered. Was there a waved yellow? Let's have a look. I'll tell you what, it's a little bit of rain still down at Clearways, and the Warburton Golf reporting into the pits right now. So it hadn't served its pit stop. It's doing it, unfortunately, in full racing conditions. But then again, those that came in under the safety car, who potentially could have gained a bit of time, lost. So Perry Wadhams, we saw him last time around. He was the last, as the safety car was going past with a group of cars, he was diving into the pits. Let's keep an eye. Maybe it was inspired, or maybe it's going to blow up in his face. Look out for that 77 TVR. It's made the pit stop. He's back in the race, whereas the Warburtons left it a lap later. And that Golf that was really challenging came in from the lead of the race, but was running in about 10th position in the early stages. But Perry Wadhams out on his own. Is he out on his own in the front of the race or not? We've got to just see where he gets past the checker, when he goes past the start-finish line, where he's going to slot in. So the Golf has to serve a 2-minute pit stop, don't forget, like everybody else, but he's doing so with the other cars running around at full racing speed. I must say Perry Wadhams is being quite circumspect, but for the Warburtons, their car's very nimble. I fancy that's one of the better ones in the wet conditions. But right now they can't speed out of the pits. They've got to wait until the 2-minute minimum time has been served. Don't blow it. Sometimes this will be a case of looking a gift horse in the mouth if you blow it. But coming down to complete a lap and move back into the lead of the race comes Perry Wadhams. No one to be seen in front, no one behind. He can see the waved yellow flags. That's because Alex Taylor's Mazda is in the gravel at Paddock Hill Bend. Well, it does seem as though by pitting late, it's been a definite advantage for Perry Wadhams, and I think possibly for the Warburtons as well. Their car's sitting second in the pit lane, but it's got to get back out onto the circuit because the pack will be coming through, and I fancy Tim Bates will be at the head of that. We saw him in the early stages of the race in his Porsche, number 12, right near the sharp end of the field. It's as though the race has been stopped. We've got one car in the pits and nobody else in sight. Perry Wadhams has passed through into the lead of this race. 12 minutes. Oh, we've got the safety car all over again. It's so... Wow, that's been a big, big gift for Perry Wadhams. And there's no safety car in front of this pack. So there shouldn't be a red line right at pit exit. But, oh no, maybe there is. Because, look, the Golf has been stationary. He's just missed his chance to come out. Now he's getting out. So not too much of a delay for John Warburton going back into the race. But the rest of the field is being bunched up before that Mazda can be removed. So those that came in first, I thought they'd got lucky, certainly with the safety car and the red light at pit exit. But those that came in really late, we're talking the Warburton Golf and Perry Wadhams in his white and red TBR Tuscan Challenge car, it's come their way. But they're going to catch the back of the pack behind the safety car. A lap to the good, because they've got 12 laps on the board, and only Tim Bates, yeah, the first two are well clear. It may be Tim Bates can catch John Warburton, who's taken over the number 81 Golf, but Perry Wadhams is out in front by best part of 30 seconds. The front end of the pack is stuck behind the safety car, and it could be for several laps as well. So all that will happen, that field will bunch up with Perry Wadham sitting at the back of it, but a lap to the good. Some days the gifts can land in your lap, but we got a safety car, we've got 10.5 minutes remaining. And the Golf, though, 29 seconds down, will be able to start getting closer and closer. As he presses on, he's got to get onto the tail of the pack of cars behind the safety car. Doesn't matter he's at the tail, because the car just in front, or a couple of cars up the road, will be Perry Wadham. So it brings him right back into the mix. But running behind the safety car, there is Perry Wadham's in 77. Oh, the Mazda has been retrieved very well indeed. So race over for Alex Taylor, but great work by the officials there. He's run down on the circuit and pulled off at the bottom of Paddock Hill Bend. Where he went wrong and came in backwards was right at the top of the screen above the graphic that says Perry Wadham's is leading the race. That's where he put the Mazda RX-7 into the gravel. With the safety car leading around. Under 10 minutes remain in this race. I'm just trying to see how far back down this train of cars the Reuben car is. I'm reckoning 9th place in this run of cars, just waiting to see. No, Warburton is now dropping down the order as others go over the start-finish line. It's Tim Bates up into 2nd place. Warburton, just by being held at pit exit for a moment, has fallen. Could have come out in 2nd or 3rd position. He's come out in 5th. So it's Perry Wadham's from the number 12 Porsche of Tim Bates. In 3rd place is Raymond Barrow in the white Camaro. It's fallen their way very much indeed. Then the Talbot Sunbeam Lotus of Martin Ellis, who's handed over to Matthew Ellis, and then Warburton has taken over the Golf in 5th place. 6th is just waiting for confirmation of that, because the group of cars hasn't come across the start-finish line. You know what, the first 5 are so far clear. They're going to be at the back of the pack, but a lap almost up on the rest. And all along, the longer the safety car stays out there, the longer, the larger their advantage is going to be. There's the white Camaro. Barrow running in 3rd place overall. It should be the Talbot Sunbeam. Yeah, Talbot Sunbeam Lotus in the background of the shot, the car in 5th place. John Warburton in the VW Golf GTI. So it's extraordinary how you can have form and fortune, but sometimes fortune on a day like this can be a rather more important ingredient about which side of a safety car you were when it came out. But the lights are out on the safety car, so the Triumph TR6 in behind will be able to get the hammer down, get on the move. And let's see what happens behind. They're free to go racing, but none of the front runners are in that group, certainly not at the front of it. In fact, the front runner is at the very, very tail of the pack, and he's a lap clear. The first 5 cars are a lap clear, all but, let's call it 3/4 between friends. Because only now does the car in 6th place, which is McDonald in that 78 Triumph TR6, go through. And I'm looking at the back of the shot until I can see Perry Wadham's, the white and red TBR Tuscan Challenge car, not yet into picture, but it should be at the back of this pack somewhere, in the lead of the race by about 80% of a lap. Here he is now, just coming down into Clark Curve, with the Porsche smoking in front of him, but now he can put the hammer down, and there is our race leader, looking for the car in 2nd place. It should be the Tim Bates Porsche. There it is with the white livery with the blue and red stripes up its bonnet, so very little between them, apart from a BMW that's not on the same lap. The Camaro's in 3rd place, is right behind as well, so it's Wadham's, Bates and Barrow covered by about 3 seconds, and the Talbot Sunbeam of Matthew Ellis is in 4th place, and he's trying to go around the outside of Druids, round the Camaro. May not work on the outside, but he could get the better exit. And then in 5th place, John Warburton in his Golf, so the first 5 covered by about 5 or 6 seconds. In fact, maybe slightly less than that. So here we have the race leader, the red flash over its nose, the TVR Tuscan Challenge car of Perry Wadham's, being chased by Tim Bates. I sense the track is now no longer getting any more damp than it has been. Barrow in the Chevrolet Camaro hanging on. He's got the grunt to really rumble his way. There he goes, the white Camaro. Down Pilgrim's Drop, trying to catch Tim Bates. The Darien's between them. That's the white car with the windscreen wipers going. That will largely stay out of the way, but actually now gets slightly in the way. Got a bit caught behind the Alpha 75, so 3 abreast, almost with wheels on the grass goes Ralph Barrow in the Camaro, and Matthew Ellis is sticking with him, trying to go through past the Darien as they run through Westfield, down into the dip at Dingledale. Five and a half minutes remain in this race. I think this is far from done and dusted. Look at the pace of the Talbot Sunbeam. I think this could be a factor in the race, but is there enough time? He's got to depose that Chevrolet very, very soon indeed. But for Tim Bates, he's trying to get past the BMW. Doesn't quite do it from that early mark BMW, but does on the run out of Clark Curve, but he's lost a bit of momentum. I think we're looking at two and a bit seconds, a gap between first and second. Let's take a look. Perry Wadhams crosses the line, 15 laps complete, 1.1 3/4 seconds, 1.746 seconds is the gap. And then almost identical gap back to Ralph Barrow, still in third place, but being pressed hard by the Talbot Sunbeam. John Warburton in the background of the Golf just can't quite keep up with them. It went very well when it became slightly greasy. And I fancy in terms of straight pace, Tim Bates in second doesn't have it, whereas in comparison to Perry Wadhams' best lap, 1 minute 42.9, which is 1.2 seconds faster than the number 12 Porsche has been. But there may be traffic. It may work to the advantage of one or other of those drivers. But the fact they were at the back of the queue means there will be traffic, but maybe traffic they can pick off. And the Martin Ellis, Matthew Ellis, Tallbeam, Sunbeam, Lotus look great in period. Sort of light muscle car of the period. It's made for purpose and its form and function is fabulous around here. It's looking really, really well planted. Trying to get the Camaro for third place. Where is the move going to come? Is the move going to come? Is Matthew Ellis going to be able to pounce? But every time he gets close to the tail of the Camaro, of course, at 5.7 litres, the Camaro just goes woof off up the road. So Raymond Barrow enjoying his form, but will he be the third driver on the podium? Perry Wadhams seems to have the answers to all the questions asked by Tim Bates. The gap has come down very, very marginally, but we're talking the difference of only literally 0.05 of a second. It's 1.7 seconds between first and second now. Someone's kicked up the dust at the bottom of Paddock Hill Bend. Oh, it's the Reliance Sabre 6 who's run off the circuit, and it looked as though there was a bit of body work. There was a bit of something in the middle of the circuit there. I hope it wasn't a wheel centre or whatever, but the Reliance Sabre 6 pulling off on the exit of Stirling's. Well, we'll get to see that stretch of the circuit fairly soon, in about a third of a lap's time, as the battle for third place, the Camaro versus the Talbot Sunbeam Lotus, turns into and out of Surtees, past the stricken 928S Porsche. And suddenly it's traffic time, which slightly delayed the power going down for Raymond Barrow, but he's got power to spare, so blasts away the Talbot Sunbeam Lotus. Still a few windscreen wipers on. Maybe it's a confidence thing, or maybe there is a little further flurry of rain at the back edge of the circuit. Oh, Raymond Barrow having to be very circumspect in traffic, and this should allow a little bit of a gain from the Talbot Sunbeam Lotus. Yes, he certainly has more momentum as they go past the Porsche 924, or the Camaro does. Talbot Sunbeam Lotus can't get the move done. He's not going to get it done surely before they get to Stirling, so this is a big... Well, he's going around the outside now. Now, let's have a look. Go through the sweeper, the left-hander at Stirling's. There was something in the middle of the track a short while ago. It might have been knocked out of the way by others, and suddenly we're coming up the order, but from some way back, because they lost so much ground with their pit stop, is number 70 Stuart Dayburn has just moved up into 7th place ahead of Tony Blake, so 70 ahead of 1. So neat and tidy, but unfortunately for them, the race has swung the way of another TV Tuscan Challenge car, and it's the one in the lead of the race. Perry Wadhams decided to stay out longer than the others. He started from 7th on the grid, but here he is leading. And Goes past the Plymouth Cuda, and the gap back to the white Porsche with the blue and red stripes up its nose. That's the one in second place of Tim Bates. Stretches and stretches. It was 3 seconds on the start-finish line, and it looks even by the time they've got to Surtees, another half second or so has been added. But there's no such enormous advantage for Raymond Barrow in third place. He's driving that 97 Chevrolet Camaro, and he's got the Talbot Sunbeam Lotus. Matthew Ellis enjoying life behind in the number 14 black and silver Talbot, but just doesn't have the grunt down the straights. Time and time again the Camaro goes thank you very much, pulls clear on the exit of Surtees and keeps stretching away. So this is the final lap of the race, and it's Perry Wadhams. He timed his pit stop perfectly by being the last car, the second last car to come in to make a pit stop. The Warburton Golf GTI came in the next lap, and that is very nearly came back out into second place, didn't quite manage it. The pit lane, he was held at pit exit, and since coming back on the track he hasn't managed to match the pace of those in front, so he's fallen back, but still good run for them in 5th place overall. In fact, particularly as it started down in 13th position on the grid, so any progress like that has to be applauded. But for Perry Wadhams, the race is very nearly over. Well, it is now. There's the checkered flag, and in the end his margin of victory over Tim Bates was, let's take a look at the end, just waiting for confirmation, 3.7 seconds, but very well driven and anticipated, or guessed, let's be honest, by Perry Wadhams and Tony Bates. They timed their pit stop just right as it happens. They were one of 5 drivers who made their pit stops pretty much after everybody else, and it swung their way with the timing of the safety car period. And you have to feel for the Rubens at the end of the race. Up into 6th place comes Oliver Rubin, but that was the TVR that was leading comfortably, really comfortably before the pit stops, and it just swung away from them by dint of where the safety car was in the order. And for your reference, the Barrow Camaro did hold off the Talbot Sunbeam of the Ellises for 3rd place. Warburton came through in 5th, and Nigel Rubin up to 6th. And for Miles Maserati, is going to be just outside the top dozen one fields, but he was really frustrated. He was at the front of the queue and not allowed to leave pit exit, so he couldn't make many gains at all, lost a lot of time, just simply where he was relative to where the safety car was. And Maserati coming through in 13th place overall, just over the John Hammersley 156 Astra GTE John was sharing with Adam Brown. So races up and down the order, but for Perry Wadhams, he might as well do the lottery tonight. The luck is with him. But he drove it very well. In fact, his fastest lap of the race was very nearly the fastest lap of the race, so the pace was there. But for Nigel Rubin and Oliver Rubin, theirs was the fastest car on the track. No, it wasn't. In fact, the very fastest lap was Tony Blake in number 1. And that was early in the race. Before the little shine of rain came down, then it got a little bit heavier. But Perry Wadhams round again. Is that the second time he's taken the finish flag? You know what? I'm not even sure that Perry Wadhams realised he'd won that race. The fact he's come round an extra time, he clearly does now, or he's suddenly spotted he's got family and friends in the crowd. But, well, you had every right to be confused in that race. And how strange if you thought, oh, that I was ruined, I was ended up down the back of the pack. And no, actually, you won it. And of course, he isn't the only winner, because you have the swinging 60s group, the cars from the 60s. We've got the Advantage Motorsport Future Classic 70s grouping, and their 1980s grouping, which was the biggest of all. And the TVR Challenge car ran in that 80s class, so outright winner and the 1980s class winner. But others will pick up class victories. You can be sure of that, many classes within each of those groupings. But a confusing race, but a great fun race. And for Perry Wadhams, car number 77, he's come away with victory in the TVR Tuscan Challenge car. His wasn't the one that started closest to the front, but it definitely was the one at the front at the very end of play. So the top 15 with Perry Wadhams victor by 3.7 seconds over Tim Bates in his Porsche. Raymond Barrow got his Chevrolet Camaro up into 3rd place and held it there, with Martin Ellis having handed over to Matthew Ellis in the Talbot Sunbeam Lotus. That challenged, but just didn't have the grunt to get past. And then the Warburtons, Chris and John, great run for them. Again, the timing of their pit stop was inspired. So they came away with 5th place. Nigel Rubin ran away in the TVR Griffith, but he got caught the wrong side of the safety car, the wrong timing of his pit stop, and had to settle for a very distant 6th place overall in the TVR Griffith that quite frankly could and should have won that race, but he came ahead. Home ahead of Stuart Dayburn, another TVR Tuscan Challenge car, and another one in the hands of Tony Blake, and Aston Blake coming home 8th, David McDonald and Rob Hardy in his Porsche rounding out the top 10. So plenty of incident, plenty of surprises in that race. Few cars spinning off, but it was thoroughly entertaining from start to finish, and I think a very good way to clear the Saturday here at Brands Hatch. The flurry of rain just added that little bit of excitement. Too much for some of the drivers, because we're going to take a look at the highlights, and I'm fairly sure there are going to be some spinners within. Again, trying to get the cars off the line, very difficult for Alex Taylor. We were missing the car that qualified on pole. That was Mark Chilton's Nissan Skyline, but all those behind provided a great battle with Tony Blake leading the way in his Tuscan Challenge car at the start of the race, in behind every sort of car imaginable. Having some great racing. Mars Maserati right in the mix in that red Porsche Turbo, but it was Tim Bates going very well at the front of the field, pushed by the Ellis's. It's all but Sunbeam Lotus, and then the John Hammers E156 Astra GTE getting all over the place. Chris Warburton having a really good run, taking on Raymond Barrow. VW Golf GTI against Chevrolet Camaro, not the most likely of combinations. And Stuart Dayburn in the grey TVR Tuscan Challenge, really taking the challenge to the Mazda RX-7 of Alex Taylor. A little spill, unfortunate there for Adrian Clark in his Porsche 928S. That was a car beached at the side of the circuit, and so was the orange Camaro going off and going in backwards at Paddock Hill Bend. That had to be pulled clear, and that brought out the safety car. That was Chaz Mallard. And then windscreen wipers going, rain on the camera lenses, and drivers having to be very careful indeed. And one driver who got it wrong was Mr. Snowball in the Plymouth Cuda going around. Matt Snowball, he rejoined the race, and everyone dived into the pits. Middle of the shot, car number 47, that's Nigel Rubin bringing it in. And when Oliver Rubin took over, it was very crowded, but they had to stop at pit exit. The safety car was out, and their group wasn't allowed to rejoin until the pack of cars running around the track behind the safety car had come past, and that scrambled the order. And then Alex Taylor, who should have been at the front end of the field, another driver going off into the gravel at Paddock Hill Bend. But it was those who stopped late that found an advantage, with Perry Wadhams coming in. He moved up towards the lead of the race and then was given the lead of the race by the time of the safety car. He was in that number 77 TVR Tuscan. He was being challenged very hard indeed by Tim Bates. John in the VW Golf GTI, John Warburton trying to make up ground. But there's the checkered flag for Perry Wadhams. Just in the background, Tim Bates in second in the white, red and blue Porsche, but advantage to Perry Wadhams. He took victory, and third place in the end to Raymond Barrow in the white Corvette Camaro. It was a great race, confusing race, but for Perry Wadhams, the checkered flag. And that is the end of Saturday here at Brands Hatch. The rain has been an added interest in the battle. We've had fantastic qualifying, 2 brilliant races to bring it to a conclusion. We're going to do it all again tomorrow with racing from start to finish. Actually, 1 extra race qualifying first thing tomorrow morning. Do make sure you join us. It's going to be a cracking day.